We're trying to look back at what has worked in America's past, things like what President Roosevelt put forward with the New Deal.
But socialism, Grace, has never worked, not in the Soviet Union, in Venezuela, elsewhere.
A far-left activist and Democratic Socialist of America organizer went on Fox News, and it went predictably poorly. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, your home for independent commentary and analysis on politics, media, internet, culture, and more. And we're going to talk about another update with this rising far-left group, the Democratic Socialists of America, who have all these soon-to-be elected members of Congress that are really breathtakingly radical and far-left in a lot of ways, and their actual agenda, as we've gone through in previous videos, is pretty extreme. And it was interesting to me to see Fox News actually invite one of the lead organizers of the Democratic Socialists of America of New York, which, of course, is behind Zoran and behind some of these congressional candidates and is a rising force in our politics. Well, this organizer went on Fox News for a contentious, confrontational interview, and it did not go great for the organizer. But you know what? Credit to showing up and having the discourse and the dialogue and facing the scrutiny. But yeah, as you will probably see as we watch this, she wasn't very interested in answering questions or directly addressing anything. Anyway, let's watch.
Our next guest has worked on dozens of Democratic Socialist campaigns and the co-chairs of the New York City DSA, the largest chapter of the Democratic Socialists in America. Grace Mauser joins us now. Grace, thank you for being here. And you heard Gavin Newsom there. I want to start with the remarkable success that Democratic Socialist candidates have had, not just here in New York, but across the nation, in Pennsylvania and Colorado and elsewhere. But when you hear establishment Democrats and others like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer here in New York, it seems that you guys don't have room for them in your future.
I would argue the opposite in many ways. Minority Leader Jeffries and other pundits who have made these comments treat us as a hostile force. But the reality is that we're very serious about winning, which is why we often run in Democratic primaries.
I'm going to pause here for a second. Whoa, these establishment Democrats treat us like a hostile force because y'all have been open about the fact that you want to invade their party, use it as a vehicle to seize power, and then, in your organizer's own words and platform, tear down and remake American society and government and our Constitution. Oh my God, but they call us a hostile force. I mean, if that's not a hostile takeover or a hostile force, what would be? Genuinely asking. I don't know. Let's keep going.
But we're also very serious about governing. And that means creating allyships, creating partnerships, building coalition with people who are excited about the type of economic populism that we put forward, and building allies like perhaps Governor Newsom, if he's interested in things like universal health care, reduced cost child care, affordable housing. These are things that we want to do because our primary goal is improving American lives.
Yeah, that might be their goal, but that doesn't mean any of the things they propose would ever work or actually do that. So they talk about affordability. They talk about, affordable childcare, by which they just mean confiscating more tax money and funneling more of it into subsidies, which by no means guarantees anything becoming more affordable, as we've seen across a whole host of different areas. And then what I find hilarious is they're like, we want affordable housing, and yet they literally have as part of their national agenda universal rent control, nationwide price controls on housing, which are, they're meant to help affordability, but literally do the opposite, destroy housing markets, constrain supply, lead to a huge housing shortage, which in the areas where prices are still allowed to rise and cause a huge increase in prices and cause total dysfunction. So much so that almost consensus among even very far left economists is that rent control policies don't work, but the DSA advocates for nationwide rent control, universal rent control, because these people, they can say they care about affordability, and that's lovely, but your intentions are really not worth very much. The consequences of the things you advocate for are what ultimately matter. And these people are the flat earthers of economics and public policy. So yeah, it's actually freaking disturbing that they're rising and having the success that they are. And as I'm sure will come up in this interview, it's not just economic populism. Though, yeah, you know what? It is popular when you offer people pie in the sky promises that will never come to fruition, and you just promise everything will be rosy and everyone will have everything they want and it'll all just be free. Of course that's popular, but it's also a lie. It's also a total fantasy. So congrats if you're willing to just lie to people or just make shit up or pretend that things are going to be rosy when you have no real solutions. Then yeah, you can hoodwink people with that. But that doesn't mean you have an amazing message of economic populism. It means you're a successful charlatan. Congrats, I guess. I don't know. I find this to be all kind of maddening. But what I will say is that he did then ask her, predictably, about some of the more extreme. They're all very extreme, all the planks of the Democratic Socialists of America Party platform. But they, of course, in their own platform on their website, advocate for totally ending any secure border and having open immigration where hundreds of millions of people could flood into America. Total open borders. That is not a caricature. That is not a straw man. That is literally what they advocate for. And they also want the welfare state to be available to all those people as well. So not even can they all just come here. They can all come here and just start, get taxpayer health care, get food stamps, get probably free housing or subsidized housing, everything. What could possibly go wrong? And what a super duper serious organization we have here. Watch her try to defend that. I'm sure that's coming up. Let's watch.
But ultimately, at the foundation, there are so many Americans that hear the word socialism and they're afraid of that, Grace, because you have led Americans to believe that there's some effort to transform capitalism into socialism, to move from individualism to collectivism. Is that the goal?
So many people, even those who might not yet identify as a socialist or are scared of socialism as a concept, understand that what's happening in our economy now is not working for them. They can't afford their house. They can't afford childcare. They can't afford education.
But they're trying to get to the American dream.
All right, just pause here. She did not answer the question. She was just asked a very direct question. Is your goal to transition from capitalism to socialism and collectivism? She did not answer yes or no. She did not give an affirmative or a negative. That is weaselly. The answer is yes. It is extremely obvious based on this group's agenda and platform. They explicitly say so. So at least stand on business and be upfront. And then the irony that she says, one, saying that the status quo is not going well for people is almost irrelevant because what matters is your alternative better or worse? And if you're pushing a much worse alternative, then talking about how terrible the status quo is just totally irrelevant as a defense of your worse alternative. But secondly, she's blaming capitalism for these things, and then she lists the areas that are the least capitalistic in American life. The most controlled by a bloated and ineffective government, the most highly subsidized and regulated sectors, like education, like housing. And she's saying people can't afford these things under capitalism. It's like, it's mad. I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy. This is fine. This is fine. We can be governed by these people. Everything will go great. Let's keep going.
Even if they're struggling, and socialism's platform is contrary to the American dream, to individual opportunity, is it not?
In many ways, I think we're trying to look back at what has worked in America's past, but also look at what has been successful in other countries. So
like
things
where?
like what President Roosevelt put forward with the New Deal.
But socialism, Grace, has never worked, not in the Soviet Union, in Venezuela, elsewhere. Let me get to this quickly, because this conversation could go on for a very long time, because I don't agree that socialism is going to help anyone in the American dream. However, we're hearing reports that ultimately there's a new platform that the DSA has that would include eliminating the Senate, replacing the president, Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to a Congress, amnesty for all illegal immigrants and defunding the Department of War. Is that the platform?
Well, many Americans understand that the democracy that we have right now isn't working for them.
Oh my God, again, you get asked about specific things from your platform, and then you pivot to responding, criticizing the status quo. I'm sorry, that's non sequitur. If you ask me, if I'm trying to sell you on a new medication to treat a disease that you have, and you're asked, so this new pill you want me to take, is it safe? Is it regulated? Have there been safety studies? Has it shown is there any evidence that it will like assist like my disease or make it go away, or it will be effective? And I pivot to, well, what you're doing now isn't really working that well. That's irrelevant to whether I should try what you're proposing. Oh my gosh. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. That's what we're doing here, I guess.
Them. I don't think our platform would get rid of the president, but it would replace the Electoral College, which when Americans, I think, first understand it in their high school government classes, they see that,
which you probably failed.
Wait, my vote isn't directly electing the president.
But would you, let me get this in because we only got a few seconds left. Do you really believe in open borders and not having deportations? That's just incredibly contrary to law enforcement and security.
America has a really long history of welcoming working class immigrants. My grandmother and her mother came through Ellis Island and worked from Germany and worked as seamstresses. I mean, we believe
that criminal illegal aliens in the country, don't they need to be removed?
We believe that demilitarizing the border, that violent oppression of working class immigrants who come here is not something that most Americans want. And I think the backlash to President Trump's policies really show that.
Grace, we've got to leave it there. Thank you for coming on. We hope you will come back and continue to talk to us because it's clear that the DSA is attracting a lot of voters. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
So I agree with that last point. Kudos to her for going into an adversarial environment where she was going to face scrutiny and tough questions and pushback. And I do appreciate the dialogue and the discourse. With that said, her last response there, when he quotes, and guys, this is still on their website today, the Democratic Socialists of America, they call for complete open borders, ending all deportations, and totally de-securing the border. And when you ask about that, she goes, well, we have a long history of welcoming working class immigrants. We don't have a long history of allowing anyone who wants to come into the country, allowing hundreds of millions of people. We don't have a long history of not deporting anyone, of totally having an insecure border. Yes, I agree. We do want a reasonable number of hardworking immigrants to come to the country if they're compatible with our culture and they have, the desire to work here and contribute. Completely agree. Most Americans do support a reasonable amount of legal, ordered, lawful, regulated immigration. Nobody supports this batshit pie in the sky proposal that is in your platform that you're just totally pivoting to and not addressing. So that's what I found maddening about this interview, just how ill-equipped a leader of this organization is to directly address the points in their public platform. Really? You're not capable of defending or addressing them head on? You just have to pivot to talking points? I mean, maybe you're well suited for politics, actually, because that's the most typical politician thing that they ever do. But oh my goodness, it's maddening to watch her weasel her way out of the most direct questions, just pivot to total non sequiturs or whataboutist deflections rather than defend a single one of their extremist policy positions they openly brag about on their website. Other than that, Grace did amazing. I don't know, man. I thought this interview was wild and revealing. I'm very glad it happened. I think these DSA extremists who are on the rise really need to be grilled and held to account for their ideas, because I do not believe that if the American people are actually informed as to what these people stand for, that this movement will catch on. But if they are allowed to hide behind slogans and promises of free and rainbows and unicorns for everybody, then they might become very popular and get into positions of real power and significance. And then things can go very bad very quickly. So I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate Fox for holding her to account. And I, too, hope that she graces us with more interview content soon to react to. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet, and do hit the like button while you are at it. And remember, guys, I call it the far left and the far right on this channel, and that is really not the best business model. Just pandering to one extreme is how you get millions of followers and make millions of dollars. So if you want to support me, do become a channel member by hitting the join button or clicking the link in the description of the pinned comment. It's the best way to support me. I also do videos where I react to comments and questions from members. So if you want your feedback or your roast or your question answered, just become a channel member, then drop it in the comments section, and I'll consider including it in an upcoming video. And with that, guys, we'll leave it there for now and be back with more real soon.